Lock Nation, what's going on? Welcome inside the vault for a Ravens Lunch Hour live stream, a Wednesday, August 7th edition. I'm your host, Bobby Trossett. Sarah's still on vacation in Thailand with her family. Sarah, hope you're having a fantastic time. Keep posting because we're all living vicariously through you. At least we are on Instagram. Welcome into the show, guys. Appreciate you being here as always. Today's live stream is brought to you by our friends at Manta Sleep, and you better believe I've got a compact, jam-packed show for you as we make our way towards preseason football, which, of course, the first of three will take place on Friday night inside the bank between the Eagles and Ravens. It's a 7:30 kickoff, and hopefully we'll learn a lot about sort of the depth chart, different position group battles, and things of that nature. Practice will be getting underway in a little over an hour from right now at 1:20 Eastern time. And then at the podium around 3:50 Eastern later this afternoon, John Harbaugh, Ben Cleveland, and Roger Rosengarten will be meeting with reporters, and we will cover that in full tomorrow. Should be some interesting questions asked there, particularly aimed at Ben Cleveland, who at one point was thought to be sort of the shoe-in starting right guard favorite, and that doesn't look to be the case anymore. I'm going to have some fun getting after the national folks yet again because ESPN decided to devote airtime earlier this week to a conversation surrounding Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott, and it was essentially a debate that was who needs to change his postseason narrative more. So we'll have some fun with that. You better believe Sarah and I enjoy going back at the national, all in good fun, but we do enjoy that. Russell Gage is the newest Ravens wide receiver, a signing that came down yesterday, and his first practice also went down as well. We'll take a look at who he is. Does he have a shot at making the 53-man roster? What's his background? And just give you some good familiarity there. We'll also go through some news and notes from Tuesday's practice and have an update on Rashod Bateman's status, along with Arthur Maulet, who's going to miss some time. Adisa Isaac is back, and Odafe Oweh has a little bit of a setback with a sprained ankle. So, number of other things included today as well, but let's begin with what I watched on ESPN earlier today. And, of course, playoff pressure and postseason careers for both Dak Prescott and Lamar Jackson so far to date. And Dak's got a couple more years on Lamar. He came into the league in 2016. Lamar 2 years later in 2018. As you know, it's been underwhelming to say the very least. They each have 2 playoff wins apiece. Dak is 2-5 in the postseason with Dallas. Lamar's 2-4 in Baltimore in terms of the postseason. Anything but, though, for both of these guys in terms of regular season win-loss record. Dak is 73-41 since taking over as the starter. And Lamar, of course, just an unbelievable number here, 58-19 as a regular season starting quarterback in the NFL. And, of course, again, he's got 2 less years of service time, and maybe even more than that, 2.5 less years of service time when you compare him to Dak Prescott. Total QBR, Dak at 67, Lamar's is 53. Total touchdowns, 18 versus Lamar's 9. And they both have struggled in the turnover category. Lamar's got 9. Dak has 7. Joe Fortenbaugh from ESPN. I think he does a lot of betting content. This is clearly the B team. It seems as if Stephen A. Smith, Molly Karam, Shannon Sharp, and the usual cast of characters that are on First Take probably are on like a pre-football season vacation. So they had a bunch of folks on there that maybe you won't recognize. But Joe Fortenbaugh was asked the question that I mentioned off the top, and here's what he had to say when pinning Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott in terms of the postseason nature up against one another.
Like, who do you trust more? Because I think that's a different conversation. It's whose narrative needs to change more in terms of postseason conversations. Joe, what would you say?
Oh, that's Lamar Jackson. I don't even think it's close. Lamar is a few years away, if he continues down this path, from us having one of the all-time sports talk debates about his place in the NFL hierarchy, his place in NFL history, his legacy, and whether or not he's a Hall of Famer. Here's what I mean by that. We've had 11 NFL players win multiple MVP awards. 11. He's one of them. 7 of them are in the Hall of Fame and have won Super Bowls. Of those 7, though, one did not. Jim Brown, because he retired in 65, First Super Bowl was 67, but he did win a championship. So of the 7 guys that are in the Hall of Fame that have won multiple Super Bowls, they've all won championships to some degree. That leaves 4 other players. Brady's one. He's won championships. He's going in. Mahomes is another. He's won championships. He's going in. Aaron Rodgers is the third. He's won championships. He's going in. And then there's Lamar. 2-4 career in the postseason, 57% completions, 6 TDs, 6 INTs. All right? You cannot blame the coaching with him because Harbaugh won a Super Bowl with Flacco, and he's one of the best coaches we've seen in decades.
Pause. You cannot blame coaching. Of course you can blame coaching. And Joe, all due respect, where you been? Did you not watch the AFC Championship game? Coaches and Lamar Jackson's coaching cannot be to blame? Are you kidding me? This is an opportunity for you. It looks like you're filling in on ESPN for the first stringers, and you come out and you didn't even do your research? Come on, man. You got to be better than that. Because while coaching wasn't the only thing to blame in the AFC Championship loss to the Chiefs, it certainly was maybe the most notable thing to blame and being worthy of blame. Come on now. From a game plan strategy standpoint, Todd Monken wasn't good enough. John Harbaugh wasn't good enough. Mike McDonald was good enough. Not good enough to win. But damn it, he was just about as good as you could possibly be, particularly in the second half against Kansas City. It's just so, I lost him. I totally lost him when he tried to absolve the coaching of blame. Now, are we talking about one game? Am I referencing one game? Yes, I am. Of the, what did we say? How many of Lamar's played in? Six postseason games to date. And I'm referring to one game. But that game was a little bit different than the other ones. They'd never gotten one game away from the Super Bowl. They'd never played the then reigning champion Kansas City Chiefs in the postseason in a do-or-die playoff game. So that meant a little bit more than the previous 5 games in the postseason that Lamar had played in and quarterbacked for. So there's still a few more seconds left in this debate here, or in his answer to the debate question. But Joe, where are you at, brother? Come on. Coaching can be blamed and should be blamed, should be part of the blame. When you divvy it up from what was an unacceptable performance in late January at home. We'll let him finish, though.
You cannot blame the defense with him because it is almost always of a championship caliber. Even on its worst days, it's top half in the league. He's the one that needs to turn it around in the postseason more than just about anybody because he's on this Hall of Fame trajectory, but we're going to get to a very interesting point with that conversation where he's one of these 11 multi-MVP winners who has done nothing in the postseason compared to everyone else who's done quite a bit.
He's not on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He is in the Hall of Fame for my money. As of right now, if he were to hang it up after 6 NFL seasons, 2 regular season MVPs, and a regular season quarterback record of 58-19, not to mention a slew, an entire bucket full of accolades. And we won't even get into like the way that he's transcended the league as well, and specifically his position. So I didn't follow that at all. I get the multi-time MVP trend that he was looking at with past quarterbacks, one of whom is still present in Aaron Rodgers, who are multi-time MVPs, also with a Super Bowl win, or at least one Super Bowl win. But what they fail to mention is that Lamar's really just getting started. He mentions Aaron Rodgers. Aaron's closer to 40 years old and the tail end of his career. Lamar's just getting going. He's 27 years old, as he told CBS Sports yesterday. That was a tough interview. That's what I built yesterday's show around. Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports. Infamously, that viral clip from a year ago when he had that one-on-one with Lamar and talked about him working out. And I don't know, he said something along the lines of, I hear you don't like working out. And Lamar kind of took offense to it, or at least kind of clapped back immediately. There's something about the way that Jonathan Jones interviews players where it comes across as just very uncomfortable, as if he's uncomfortable, and that the rapport between him and his subject, his interview subject, never seems to be there. Now, he did end up getting Lamar to share some insights in terms of the physique change and slimming down, and how he actually referred to himself as fat from a couple of years ago when he saw a video and highlights from a Browns game. So like that stuff was good, and that's why I built the show around it. But did you hear when he said, if you watch the full interview, he was like, Lamar, we tend to slow down when we age. And Lamar's like, I'm 27 years old. He's not aging. Okay, yeah, he's been in the NFL for 6 years, and he's got some tread on his tires, if you will, particularly given the role that he's had to play as Superman prior to last year because of the lack of offensive investment around him, obviously most notably at the wide receiver position. But he's 27. Why are we acting? Why is Joe Fortenbaugh, why are these national analysts acting as if it's all said and done for Lamar? His story is still being written. He's entering year 7 in the league, and he'll turn 28 in January. What are we doing? Clinton Yates, another panelist, responded to Joe with this.
If you're in the discussion for potentially getting a busted Canton, you've already gone farther than the guy that's never won an MVP. So to me, the turnaround is for the person that's got the higher distance to go to get to what you thought they could have been. And that's why it's Dak in that particular case. If Lamar Jackson never gets a Super Bowl ring, he still have won 2. We won a daggone Heisman Trophy, for goodness sakes. He changed the way the game is played. There's a reason why running backs are getting run out of the league. It's because quarterbacks like Lamar can do the position themselves as well as throw the football. That, to me, has to matter if we're going to go to the discussion about Canton. But Dak specifically, I think, needs to turn it around because the ceiling wasn't that high. Not necessarily everybody thought, oh, my God, this guy's going to revolutionize football and this, that, and the third. But there's been a lot of time invested in him. There's been a lot of money invested in him. We've talked about him all day being a part of the Cowboys. I think for what Dak has to complete, for people to believe that he was even half the guy that he thought he was, this has to turn around. For Lamar, he's still got enough other stuff where you can say potentially he was snake bit, or if you compare him to some of our greats, as you just did so eloquently, Joe, then maybe. But he's already at a higher point. So I don't think that he's got as far to go to turn it around.
All right, good stuff there from Clinton, kind of clapping back at his co-panelist there, Joe Fortenbaugh. But let me go back to this. Okay, how about let's bring in what have you done for me lately in terms of this argument around the postseason when you want to pin. The national outlets love pinning guys against one another, and in this case, it's Lamar and Dak, and we've seen this over the last week or so. By the way, pinning guys against one another. Pause. Sorry. Okay, what have you done for me lately? Did you all watch that first round playoff matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers back in January? It was ugly. It was an utter thumping. It was never even close. The final score was 48-32, but that doesn't even begin to indicate how much of a graveyard stomp job that was by the Green Bay Packers of the Dallas Cowboys. So what have you done for me lately? Well, that was a choke job by Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Now, you may be wanting to, or maybe you did call the Ravens' loss to Kansas City at their place after getting the bye, beating Houston, primetime game against the Chiefs. You may call that a choke job, but it is defined significantly differently. Because what are we talking? 1 or 2 plays was probably the difference there. Can't say the same thing for Dallas. Lamar has been competitive in the postseason despite. And granted, I know you go back to that 2019 divisional round game, and while the score again doesn't indicate that was a blowout, it never felt like that was actually a competitive game because of the lack of answers that the Ravens had for what Tennessee was throwing at them, particularly with the Derrick Henry freight train. He went for well over 200 rushing yards that day on like 30 plus carries, like just a straight up beast like superhuman performance. So again, in the what have you done for me lately category, this isn't even a conversation. And honestly, it shouldn't even be a spirited debate or a compelling debate to begin with, because of the difference in accolades at this point in their careers. And Lamar has 2 less years in the NFL when you compare him to Dak. That is that. Don't want to spend too much time on it and waste too much oxygen, because we do have a wide receiver signing that we have to discuss, which we will, coming up in just a bit. But before we do, this episode, as you heard me say at the top, is brought to you by our friends at Manta Sleep, and this is the official sleep mask partner of the Vault for yet another football season. Manta Sleep gives you a little bit of everything. The Manta Sleep Mask Pro is what I know both me and Sarah's family rocks. It gives you true 100% blackout for a deeper sleep. You've got C-shaped eye cups for unbeatable side sleep comfort. 0 pressures applied to your eyelids or lashes. And you've got advanced materials and ventilation for unmatched breathability. I wanted to bring you over to the site just quickly to give you an idea of what it looks like. Again, that is mantasleep.com. You can visit the show notes below to pop on yourself. But other than that, Sleep Mask Pro, which is this one that I always show you, one of their best sellers, you've got the Sound Mask, which is literally Bluetooth built in. I know Sarah's son loves that. Aiden loves the Sound Mask. You've got the standard original sleep mask, the silk mask. So much to choose from right here. They give you so much variety. You can read about their mission and everything else that they're offering at mantasleep.com. And the best part is, for you, if you find something you like, make sure you use our discount code at checkout. That's VAULT10, VAULT10, and they'll give you 10% off your next purchase. Thanks, Manta Sleep, for being one of our proud brand sponsors and supporting us for yet another football season. We're pleased, really, really pleased to be back with Manta. Yesterday's breaking news, just as we finished up Tuesday's Ravens Lunch Hour live stream, Baltimore went ahead and signed a former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, a former Atlanta Falcon, and a wide receiver by the name of Russell Gage, who was still available on the open market as a veteran free agent. We should note that he missed all of last season with a ruptured patellar tendon. And so, he's been out of the league for a minute here. He last played in 2022. And that was in Tampa Bay, where he spent a couple of years, began his career in Atlanta. And in 2022, he had 51 catches for 426 yards and 5 touchdowns. So not something that's going to be needle moving per se, but certainly somebody who potentially could look to be an upgrade for the back end of the wide receiver room. And right now, there's really 4 locks, and perhaps there's 2 opportunities for guys to be the 5th and 6th wide receivers taken on the 53-man roster. More on that in just a bit. But here is sort of at a glance what you're getting in Russell Gage. 28, he'll turn 29 in January. He's 6 feet tall, 184 pounds. Played his college ball at LSU. He was a 6th-round pick by Atlanta back in 2018, 194th overall. He spent his first 4 years in Atlanta, the last couple with Tampa Bay. And again, the career numbers don't jump off the page at you. 244 receptions, just a hair underneath and south of 2,500 receiving yards and 14 receiving touchdowns. So again, nothing crazy here, but when you take a look at season by season, he actually put together a couple really productive years in Atlanta in 2020 and 2021, where he was just below 800 receiving yards in those seasons back to back with 4 touchdowns in each. So he's capable, at least he was in recent years, capable of being, sort of a productive, reliable wide receiver 3 or 4. Tom Brady spoke very highly of him for the short time that they spent together in Tampa. But then obviously having lost all of 2023 to that injury is tough. And now what gets even tougher is the competition in the room, boy. It is starting to heat up, and you got a lot of bodies that are competing for wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6, if you will. Let's call the 4 locks as they are: Zay, Rashod, Nelly, and Devontae. Those are your 4 locks in my mind at wide receiver. We're keeping tight ends out of this, even though obviously Mark and Isaiah are going to prove to be very important pieces in the offensive puzzle. But outside of those 4 guys, in my mind, you're going to have a veteran in Keith Kirkwood. You're going to have a vet in Deontay Hardy, who's more than likely making this team for his return specialist duties. You're going to have the new addition in Russell Gage. That's 3. So Kirkwood, Hardy. Now you add Gage in. And we haven't even mentioned Tylan Wallace, who was on the 53-man roster last year and in past years and is having a really standout training camp. A reminder that what you're looking at is the initial unofficial first depth chart of the season, of training camp, I should say, presented by the Ravens PR department. So this is unofficial. This is not from the personnel department. But the way I see it is Tylan, Kirkwood, Hardy, Gage, and maybe some of the undrafted rookies are going to be competing for your 5th and 6th spots in what's become a really jammed and actually competitive back end of the wide receiver room. Something that I'm looking forward to kind of digging into on Friday night during the preseason game, because John Harbaugh did mention that Russell Gage is expected to play in that game. And you better believe he's going to be playing for a spot on this 53-man roster. I ask you, and I asked my Twitter audience this yesterday, I'm curious to see and hear what you guys think. As of right now, if you had to choose today, prior to preseason football, which we'll learn more, who are the 2 players? Who are the 2 wide receivers outside of those 4 locks that I gave you? In Zay, Rashod, maybe Tylan's a lock, but for my money, it's Zay, Rashod, Nelly, and Devontae are my 4 locks. Who's your 5th and 6th guy? Is it Tylan and one of the veterans? Is it Tylan and one of the undrafted rookies potentially? Who are you giving wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6 to prior to preseason? I'm sure your answers will change in the coming weeks when we actually get game reps to comb through. But who you rolling with? Evan says at this point, he's rolling with Tylan Wallace and Russell Gage. Makes sense. Daniel Geiger says so as well. Daniel, I owe you an email. I know you're trying to get out on the golf course. Appreciate you for following up. Sebastian says Tylan Wallace and Deontay Hardy. There is a chance that Deontay will be looked at as a return specialist, and perhaps you take him out of that list and solely place him as a special teams guy, meaning he could be sort of your 7th wide receiver, but more of a special teams guy in terms of the way that you ultimately construct the 53-man roster. Meltrap says replace Bateman with Gage. You're done with Rashod already, huh? Joey Pond says Wallace and Gage. Eye of Horace Torres says that Devontae is wide receiver 5. A lot of you feel similarly, I think, about Tylan Wallace and Russell Gage. I'm seeing a lot of that. Adam78 likes Dayton Wade, the undrafted rookie who's made some waves. Interesting stuff. Definitely one of, if not the most compelling, maybe that and like running back 3. Those 2 storylines are going to be 2 things that I'm watching. What is the back end of the wide receiver room looking like on Friday night? Who's getting snaps? Who's getting opportunities? Who's going to pop? Who's going to flash? And then outside of Justice Hill, and you're not even going to see Derrick Henry out there. Maybe you won't even see Justice on Friday night either. But who's going to kind of emerge as RB3? Is it Rasheen Ali, the rookie out of Marshall, or is it the former undrafted rookie who spent last year on Baltimore's practice squad, Owen Wright. Who's it going to be? Very curious. That's the Russell Gage conversation. Let's get to this, which is the latest on Rashod Bateman. Coach Harbaugh made sure to answer reporters' questions yesterday, being that the day prior, Rashod left practice after hauling in just an incredibly acrobatic catch, but falling hard, staying on the turf for a few minutes. Remember, Gianna Hahn told us that yesterday, who was kind enough to spend some time with us here inside the vault, being that she's out there every single day at camp for Baltimore Banner. But he left practice on his own power, but then was not participating yesterday. John Harbaugh insisted that it's nothing long term. Well, what is that defined as? Obviously, he's not going to give us a timetable on that, but we're now back-to-back weeks where Rashod has had a midsection, rib area, that type of the body setback that has forced him to miss some time. And it begs the question, given Rashod's track record, how confident can we be that he's going to be able to actually complete and be durable for an entire summer? This would be his first full training camp summer of health, which it looks like that's hanging in the balance right now. Now, some of you thought that the Russell Gage signing and the timing of Rashod going down and maybe not being present for practice was related, that there was a correlation between the two. My thought on that is that there isn't. I think that you bring in Russell Gage regardless, because you want to round out that back end of your wide receiver room as much as possible. And perhaps they haven't been thrilled with what they've seen from the Keith Kirkwoods of the world with some of the undrafted rookies in there, and they want to bring some competition out there. We all know a little bit of training camp competition breeds excellence, breeds battles, and it's getting really, really compelling to round out that room. Aside from Rashod, there were several other names absent as well. One being Arthur Maulet, who we got an update on just before I came on the show from Cameron Wolfe, ESPN national reporter. So we'll get to that in just a second. Trayvon Mullen, no surprise there. He's dealing with a shoulder at the cornerback position. Quincy Roach, outside linebacker. Tyler Linderbaum continuing to miss time with a soft tissue setback. And then some other names are on here as well. But notably, we'll have an update on Odafe Oweh in just a couple slides from right now. And then the big news was Adisa Isaac returning. He is no longer on the non-football injury list, which is a big deal. And Deontay Hardy, who had also been banged up at the start of camp, was back out there at yesterday's practice. Let's go one by one, though, and take a look at this, maybe even in terms of level of importance, because this guy played a pretty big role for the Ravens last year with those nickel packages. He understands AFC North football, and he is a mauler. That's Arthur Maulet. He's going to have a scope on his knee later this week, according to Cameron Wolfe. The expectation is that he's going to miss some regular season time, possibly all of September, which would mean about 4 games. But it's not season ending. And that's exactly what John Harbaugh mentioned at his press conference yesterday. And as Cameron goes on to write, he has been certainly one of the Ravens' top performers throughout camp as a slot corner and a blitzer. They are going to miss him, but they are built for this inevitable injury bug to hit them at the cornerback position. Perhaps this opens up some opportunities for others. Jeff Zrebiec just commented on this in his latest courtesy of The Athletic. And Jeff said this: the Ravens have other options in the slot. Safety Kyle Hamilton thrived in the nickel role last year and is a guy who the defensive coaches like moving around and matching up in the slot. I'm not sure there was another defender league-wide who logged as many different snaps in different roles and capacities than Kyle Hamilton did a season ago. By the way, I'm looking forward to going to St. Francis on Saturday night for the unveiling of a new fitness center, a new gym that Kyle Hamilton poured a bunch of money into. So look forward to that coverage, and I'll have that on Monday. The Ravens could also, more from Jeff here, the Ravens could also move veteran corner Marlon Humphrey inside, which would allow them to play returning starter Brandon Stephens and rookie first rounder Nate Wiggins on the outside. I like the idea of that. Bring Marlon in. We know he's dominant inside. At least he has been in past years. And then allow Brandon and Wiggins to do what they do best. Put opposing playmakers on their island. Just ask Jamar Chase what it was like trying to perform against Brandon Stephens in one of their 2 matchups last year against Cincinnati. It was fantastic. The thought of that seems like it fits well, assuming that Nate will be ready for the moment. Move Marlon inside. Stephens and Wiggins handle duties outside. You've also got returners in Ardarius Washington and Pepe Williams. As Jeff notes, they're 2 young defensive backs who are having strong training camps and have experience playing in the slot in the NFL. We haven't even mentioned Jalen Armour Davis as well, who's going to be fighting for a spot on the 53-man roster. He and Pepe, those 2022 fourth rounders from a few years ago that have been banged up and have sort of all kind of given us this thought of what if? What are they? What if? And what are they? Hopefully those questions are answered in the coming weeks. But that's the update on Arthur Maulet. Next up, rookie third rounder at the outside linebacker position out of Penn State. Adisa Isaac practiced for the first time, and for the first time since rookie minicamp to be exact. We know that he had been on the non-football injury list with a lingering hamstring injury, and given some of the questions and the thinness right now in the outside linebacker room, this was a welcome sight to have Adisa back in the picture. Jamison Hensley caught one of his drills. This is courtesy of Jamison's X account. You can follow him at Jamison Hensley. They're very, very strict with where they allow reporters to be at any time throughout these periods and what they allow reporters to actually share online. But here he is rocking the number 50 jersey, getting some drills in, punching, showing the explosiveness there. Not full speed, obviously. But again, I can't stress it enough that with Jadeveon Clowney as last year's dominant edge presence that he was, coming out of nowhere as a veteran, to give him 9.5 sacks, a ton of pressures, locker room leadership, and just a seamless fit with him no longer being there. Yes, Kyle Van Noy's coming off a career year as well, in which he gave the team 9 sacks and he wasn't even there for the full season. But now you have Odafe Oweh, who's dealing with a sprained ankle. We'll get to that in just a second. You lose Malik Ham to, I think it was an ACL tear last week. His season is over. He had a promising potential with him, which is why they gave him an opportunity to make the 53 a year ago. But you can see why, like without Adisa around, it was kind of like, dang, you don't know what you have in David Ajabo. Odafe is now going to be down, you would think, for the short term with that ankle, or at least try to play through it. You got to be careful this time of year with Kyle Van Noy because he's a veteran on the other side of 30 who you want to make sure is available and ready to go. He had the career year of his life a season ago, and he didn't even participate in a training camp. I actually just ran into him the other night on a walk in Harbor East, and you could kind of tell he was like, damn, training camp sucks. He didn't say that, but like that was the feeling that he gave me. And can you blame the guy? He didn't even need a camp. He's too much of a professional. And in his words, he went from the couch to making a big, big contribution to the Ravens last year defensively for Mike McDonald. So the moral of the story here is, obviously, it's a jolt to get Adisa back. John Harbaugh mentioned that they're going to ramp him up. There's still time. You hope so. And you hope he can get some preseason work in. Because we've seen this movie before with outside linebackers coming from Penn State who come in a little bit prematurely in terms of development and don't end up panning out. The hope is that Odafe can still be that guy, which is why the Ravens were willing to pick up his 5th-year option this offseason. but it's far from a guarantee. Speaking of Odafe, quick chug of water here. Talking for an hour every day. Not easy. I got a big mouth, though, so it's fine. So Odafe is dealing with a sprained ankle, as I mentioned. He'd been having a tremendous camp prior to this setback. So much so, we talked last week that John Harbaugh actually had to kind of put the reins on him before the pads came on. Like, come on, man. Like, let's be careful out here. You know, you're really explosive. You're eating these guys up. Like, pretty sure he's taken Roger Rosengarten to school a couple times, giving the rookie all he can handle, which is a great sign. But it's also a bummer because of the direction that he was heading in. Hopefully it's a small setback. John Harbaugh didn't seem worried, but he was one of the many absences yesterday, and now you know why. Elsewhere, we spend time talking about this, and that was yesterday. Spent a good deal of the live stream chatting about Connor Williams, who was one of the remaining sort of standout, aside from last year's injury, which was I think it was an ACL injury in December, late season. But he was one of the remaining kind of standout interior offensive linemen available on the free agent market. He is no longer available. Connor Williams, former Dolphins and Cowboys center, reached agreement on a one-year deal worth up to $6 million, including $3 million guaranteed with the Seattle Seahawks. So Mike Macdonald plucks a player who just visited the Ravens earlier this week, clearly left without a deal. Not sure how much interest there was in him, but certainly there was enough to bring him in for a visit, which kind of begs the question: do the Ravens feel like they need more bodies? Are they not pleased with what they have right now, with some of the questions that are still lingering, particularly at right guard? And I'm not sure I'm going to call right tackle a question right now, just because you have Patrick McCary, and let's have some grace and let's have some patience for Roger Rosengarten. But this is a dude in Connor Williams who he's been a solid starting center in this league. He has the ability to play guard. He did tear his ACL, like I mentioned, in December. But he was one of the highest graded interior offensive linemen in the entire league last year, pre-injury, at 86.5. That's according to Pro Football Focus. So the Ravens and Seahawks both had proposals out there. There were some other teams in the mix as well. And Seattle and Mike Macdonald end up getting a guy that the Ravens at least had at least some interest in. And the question becomes, who will fill the void that Kevin Zeitler leaves behind, having handled right guard duties very admirably in the aftermath of Marshall Yanda's retirement? John Jay checking in on that exact same topic in the live chat, commenting that, man, Kevin Zeitler was a dog for us. Should have kept him. And they let him walk for not a lot of money, where he ended up signing. Isn't he in Detroit now? Don't quote me on that. I think he's a Detroit Lion now. Daniel Geiger says Ben Cleveland has to step up. I'll be curious to see what he has to say, what kind of questions he faces in a few hours from right now when reporters meet with him at the podium. But I got to tell you, I think between now and week one, you're going to see another player come in here. I'm not saying there's another player out there from an interior offensive lineman standpoint that's as quality as Connor Williams was and is. But something tells me the Ravens are not satisfied in that department, and perhaps are looking at that as a vulnerable position group that could use some bolstering. They felt that way with the wide receiver position, which is why they brought in Russell Gage. Do they feel similarly about edge, about outside linebacker? Is that an area, much like they did last year, where they could bring in a player or two. Remember, they brought in KVN and Jadeveon Clowney for pennies. Neither player was even on the roster this time last year. Hard to friggin' believe, but that's true. What do you guys got going on in the live chat right now? We'll get to some Q&A in just a bit, making sure I also don't miss anything fresh. Ravens just tweeted out they had a soccer game last night at M&T Bank. Maybe some of you went out there. That stadium is capable of hosting so many different sports too, which is cool. I like how they do that. Some sad news, or maybe some context that we needed to some really sad news from last month when Jacoby Jones passed at the age of 40. According to the New Orleans coroner's office, Jacoby passed due to hyperintensive. I want to make sure I get that right. Is it hypertensive? I think it's hypertensive cardiovascular disease. So heart disease. The manner of the death was natural in his sleep. So I know a lot of you were wondering how this happened. We just saw him. The Ravens had him out with a bunch of former Ravens legends. I think it was during OTAs or minicamp week. And he was having fun, posing for photos. Sarah and I had him on the show in April, of course. And then you remember what Lamar had to say yesterday, which I think was pretty friggin' powerful. A lot of people were talking about this on the internet yesterday.
Flacco won the Super Bowl down in New Orleans.
Yeah, Reed, those guys.
That's right. Super Bowl's back
Jacoby
in New Orleans
Jones,
this
rest in
year.
peace to
That's
him.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Is this going to be the year?
God's will. Hopefully Jacoby fly high for us, man. You know, we trying to bring one home. And it's gonna be in his hometown, you know, New Orleans and stuff like that. So we definitely trying to make something happen, you know, but it starts in practice. And that's all I can focus on right now. I can't focus on the Super Bowl until we got that shot again.
Good stuff there from Lamar. Always looking out for his guys and his former legends that have come before him. It is awfully special and could be very, very fitting that in Jacoby's hometown of New Orleans, where the Ravens won that Super Bowl, where he won that Super Bowl in February of 2013. And notice how I say he could have made him MVP that game, couldn't you? No doubt there was a case to be made. But how fitting is it that 11 years later, the Ravens could have an opportunity to do the exact same thing in the exact same building, in the exact same town? Hope we see that 12 patch somewhere, whether it's on the helmet, on the jersey. He deserves it. And I think it's fair to say this upcoming season, I think a lot of folks are dedicating it to number 12. Rest in peace. Every time this year, every year around this time, John Harbaugh and company do what they call ball security drills with hoses, and it ends up being rather entertaining. Having been out there a few years ago during this drill, no reporter is safe. You have to be really careful if you don't want to get soaked. But essentially, vets have hoses that they're given. And then the young rooks, undrafted, drafted, you name it, the younger players have to go fetch these footballs while being doused with water via hoses. It's pretty hilarious. Now, while we saw rookies get after it yesterday, we also saw one of the oldest guys in the building, 60-plus-year-old John Harbaugh, who showed why he used to play the game, and this was pretty freaking hilarious. There he goes, getting doused by what looks to be Roquan and another guy. How about the form here with the stop, drop, and roll? Corrals the football. Rowe and Malik Harrison, it looks like we're getting Harbs. Look at these guys. Look at the form. Harbs hits the ground hard. Side of his head bangs into the turf. This is hysterical. You got the whole building loving it. And let me tell you, for those of you who've been in the Baltimore area, it goes without saying, while maybe this actually is helpful to the overall strategy when it comes to ball security, if nothing else, it's a damn good cool down because it has been stifling. Good stuff from Harbs. We'll get to some Q&A in a second. If you have questions, we'll spend the last few minutes of today's live stream talking Q&A. Still no update, at least one that's substantive, when it comes to Brandon Ayuk. There's been a lot of smoke out there since the 49ers sort of leaked that they were willing to listen to trade offers. Pittsburgh's been in there, Cleveland, New England. Who's it going to be? Is he going to end up in the AFC North? It's a problem if he ends up in the AFC North because he's a dog, and he's going to make any team in the AFC North better instantly from a production standpoint. And speaking of the AFC North, coming up tonight, our debut show. Some of you feel like perhaps my fandom isn't to your liking. Maybe I don't go to bat as much as you'd like for Lamar and others. You know, I got that traditional side to me when it comes to broadcasting. I have opinions, certainly, but maybe I don't kick and scream and yell the way you would want me to. Well, guess what? Maybe this is a gift because every single Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Eastern, starting tonight, that's my job. Raising my fandom to the next level. And I'm going to be debating with these three guys, these three creators, these YouTubers, Steelers Nation Australia, Cincinnati. We're going to have some fun with him. Trust me on that. And Chef Zay. These three guys are going to be representing the AFC North roundtable for their respective teams. It's going to be the four of us, 6 o'clock Eastern tonight. For those of you who want the link, all you got to do is go on to YouTube and click or just search AFC North Roundtable. Should come right up. AFC North Roundtable. We'll have some fun. Something tells me and Cincinnati may end up going at it because that's kind of that YouTube channel name is a little suspect there. Cincinnati. All right, guys. Hope to see you there. Let's go Q&A for the last 10 minutes. 10 minutes of Q&A. Let's also open up the lines if you want to ask your question online. Here it is. We've got some super chat donations as well. I appreciate you. Truth Bearer is first. I just dropped a link in there if you'd like to hop on. Truth Bearer, Dak has also had way better supporting casts with Des Bryant and Ezekiel Elliott. Oh, okay. You're going back to the earlier conversation. I got you. When the national outlets pin Dak and Lamar up against one another for the purpose of debate. Good stuff, for sure. Certainly better supporting casts. No doubt about it. Just so you guys know, I always give precedent to super chats. So if you guys ask a question via super chat, it'll definitely be presented on the screen. And that reminds me, the Bobby Baltimore Discord server is a great place to hang out too and ask me questions. I try to get to as many as I can. There is a link that is free to join in the show notes below. 24/7 hub for conversations surrounding Baltimore sports. Would love to see you there. Trevon Wright, he chimes in. I think we move Patrick McCary to right guard because of the versatility, and Roger starts at right tackle. What are your thoughts? That's an option. But I don't know if they think that Roger's ready. Does Roger need some time to develop here right out of the gate? That's sort of the thought that I'm getting, Trevon. But I think it's certainly an option given Patrick's all the different combinations that he's been a part of. But I'm not sure it's guaranteed that Roger is week one ready at this point. I need some preseason work to really weigh in on that. But that's a good thought. Dozy Dope, thank you for the $1.99 super chat feature. The live chats are rolling right now. The waiting room is cooking for those of you who want to join the show. I just dropped the link in. If you'd like to pop on the show for a minute or two, please hit that link. And before we go to the lines, I want to be sure to shout out and thank a couple of our newest patrons who just signed up to support us via Patreon. This is your monthly shout out. Irene and DeSales, thank you both for believing in what we're building. It's a great way to support us, especially this time of year. And if you guys are interested in doing the same for as little as $1.99 or $4.99, you can support us for a monthly shout out in exchange. And we really appreciate you guys. Chef Trez, Daniel Geiger, you guys are both in the waiting room. And let's go to the lines here inside the vault. Real quick, let's get in as many as we possibly can before we finish up the show. Chef, you're on deck. How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing good, Bobby. I just gotta say, that past week when you had that live stream as I was barbecuing, had to push back on my take. But
you're not mad at me with the whole dark horse
no,
thing,
no,
are you?
no. I mean, I always looked
I'm
at
mad at you.
no, I'm not. I always looked at dark horse kind of like an underdog in a way. And I feel like that's something that it's not really just limited to, people know who you are. Because I would almost say last year, Mark Andrews almost became a dark horse in a way after he got injured. And he was pushing to get back for that AFC Conference Championship game. In a way, I would kind of say he was kind of a dark horse, kind of almost a little bit of a trump card if he was healthy enough. Obviously, it didn't really play out that way because he didn't play that much during the game. But
I think we just define dark horses differently because the way I view it is like it's got to be an unproven guy, somebody that comes like out of nowhere and out of hibernation. And like Keaton was that this time last year. We had no clue who he was. I mean, we knew who he was. His father won a freaking Super Bowl, Anthony Mitchell, with the 2000 team. But that's the way I define it. Like it's the same thing that Sarah, like just different definitions, I think, because Sarah and I had this the other day about what was the topic? What the heck was our topic where we had completely different definitions on? Now I'm forgetting it off the top of my head. But anyway, I hear you. I appreciate you popping on.
Yeah, it was that. But what I want to get to real quick was offensive line, and then also with the signing of Russell Gage. I really like the signing. I think it really gives Bateman competition. I feel like going into this training camp, mini camp, all that other stuff, he didn't have competition. Something that Harbaugh loves to say, the Ravens love to say, iron sharpens iron. But I don't see you can do that if you don't have any competition. So I love the signing. Hopefully, once Bateman gets back out there, him and Gage are going to be competing.
There's definitely going to be competitions, especially what we talked about earlier on in the back end of the room for sure. So appreciate you, brother. Great seeing you.
Yeah.
Talk soon. Chef Trez. Guest lines are open. Daniel, you're on deck. Dozy Dope with a $4.99 super chat donation. We appreciate you. Who will be on our wide receiver lineup if Bateman doesn't last? Well, let's bring up the depth chart real quick. There's going to be plenty of guys. Okay, so Zay, you've got Zay. If Bateman doesn't last, which, again, we have no indication whether or not this is something that's even going to sideline him for a few weeks. We have no idea. It's not long-term. That's what John Harbaugh said. He's not going to put any kind of timetable on it, but the proof will be in the pudding in terms of what practice looks like over the next couple of days. We're not going to see him in the preseason, I would imagine. But should something happen, worst comes to worst. You got Zay, you've got Nelly, you've got Devontae, you've got Tylen, and then after that, you got a bunch of vets who are going to be competing against one another. Deontay, Russell, Kirkwood, and several undrafted rookies who are trying to make a name for themselves as well, along with Malik Cunningham, who's trying to do the unthinkable and transition from quarterback to wide receiver, and in the same year while doing so, find a way onto a 53-man roster. That'd be pretty freaking sensational. Don't count on it, though. I think that's probably a long shot. To the live chat we go. Back to the guest lines in the waiting room. Daniel Geiger. He's got a golf invitation that's out on the table for me, and my schedule has just been completely whack. So hopefully he understands. But welcome inside the vault, brother. Good to see you.
Hey, Bobby, how are you doing?
Great, man. How are you?
I'm good. I got to be quick because I'm at work. But my question is golf related. I got to know what I'm getting into here, brother. What kind of rounds are you shooting?
Oh, it's golf related. So for me, the game has been in shambles of late. The best round of the season was an 83 at Rum Point, but that's not in shambles for me. Shambles has been this past weekend when it was 110 degrees and I was out there drinking freaking transfusions and hitting it sideways because of how lack of hydrated I was. So I have no
Understandable.
idea what version of me is like the current golfer, but back in the heyday, I was just trying to break 40 every 9 playing competitively in
Yep.
high school, but that's been 10 plus years ago. How about you?
I'm looking forward to a good round. Hopefully we can get Q out there. I've been playing for a little while, so hopefully I can give you a run for your money.
Hell yeah, I like it. That's very humble. That's like AKA. That's like, yeah, I break 80 every time out.
Something like
Guess we'll
that.
see. Guess we'll see. Get back to work, brother. Thank you though, and I will be in touch.
Thanks, Bobby.
See you, man. All right, guys. Good group today. Packed show. Good to get some of you guys in there as well. Bunch of conversations that I wasn't able to get to today in the live chat just because there's a lot that are coming in from different angles, but I try to get to as many super chats as possible. Would love for you guys to join the Vault Patreon community if you haven't already done so. Patreon.com/RavensVault podcast is where you can find more information on that. I'll next be in action tonight. The AFC North Roundtable. Go look it up on YouTube, AFC North Roundtable. That's all you got to search. 6 o'clock Eastern. I'll be live going head-to-head with these guys, so hope to see some of you there. A huge shout-out to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this episode, and to all 600-plus of you between Twitter and YouTube for dropping by the show. You guys are the best. Ravens Lunch Hour live stream in 23 hours from right now on Thursday the 8th. Ken McCusick from Film Study, who's been out at training camp, will be by for his perspective and insight. You know he's analytical. You know he's nitty-gritty with the numbers. I love his football mind, and I can't wait to tap into it tomorrow. He's our special guest. Still trying to track down some other big guests as well. We'll give you updates on that when I have them. But appreciate you as always. The things that you can do for free: like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to be notified when we're dropping our content, share our channel in a group chat, Facebook group, family group chat, somebody that you feel like might enjoy our stuff that has never heard of us. We're trying to build this thing as much as possible, and hard to believe Sarah and I are gearing up for our 3rd season together in just a few short weeks. Mark your calendars as well. I will have coverage for preseason play on Friday night. It's a 7:30 kickoff. I may do a pregame show. I'm still trying to figure that out or not. Trying to gauge interest of whether or not I should only do a postgame show. But if you think you would hop on from 6:30 to 7:30 on Friday night, shoot me a note. You can follow me on Instagram at Bobby Baltimore. I can be found on Twitter as well at Bobby Baltimore. Would love some feedback on that in terms of what might be best. You can also email us at BaltimoreRavensVault@gmail.com. And again, thanks for dropping by the show. Talk to you guys soon. Later.